Now I'm going to tell you about 10 brutal weapons used by the Vikings, and it will definitely shock you. The Viking era is shrouded in myths about fearless warriors with horned helmets, whose fury knew no bounds. But behind this popular image lies a reality that is much more complex and pragmatic. Their dominance on the seas and battlefields of Europe was due not only to their courage, but also to their sophisticated, deadly arsenal, where each item had been honed over centuries of use. These warriors were not just wild berserkers, but skilled tacticians and craftsmen whose weapons were an extension of their will. They were masters of tools designed for one purpose: victory at any cost. We will take a look at their arsenal and see that the true power of the Vikings lay not in blind fury, but in cold calculation and perfect mastery of their craft. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn which weapon, contrary to popular belief, was the most common on the battlefield, and why the most expensive sword was not always the most effective. What if I told you that the most personal and versatile weapon of the Vikings was not a sword or an axe? I am talking about the scramasax, or simply the sax, a large combat knife that was the faithful companion of every free Scandinavian. This item was much more than just a weapon of last resort. The scramasax was a versatile tool, equally useful in battle and in everyday life. It could be used to cut food, trim branches, and pierce enemy armor in close combat. Its blade length varied from that of a short knife to that of a short sword, reaching up to 75 centimeters. Unlike an expensive sword, the sax was affordable for almost every warrior. Its simple design with a single-sided sharpening required less time and skill to manufacture. But don't be fooled by its simplicity. In skilled hands, it was a formidable weapon. The scramasax was carried in a leather sheath positioned horizontally on the belt, behind the back. This position allowed it to be quickly drawn with either hand, which was critical in the chaos of battle. It was a weapon that was always at hand, ready for use. In close combat, when there was no room for a long sword or axe, the sax became the main weapon. A stabbing blow with such a blade could easily pass between the plates of armor or into unprotected areas of the body. Its weight and shape allowed it to deliver powerful chopping blows. It was this versatility that made this knife so popular. It was a symbol of the status of a free man, his indispensable assistant in everyday life, and a reliable defender in battle. Losing a sax was tantamount to losing a part of oneself. For a Viking, this knife was an extension of his arm and his will. It did not require as much care as a sword, and was much more practical on expeditions. In the forest, on a ship, or in a tavern, the scramasax was always with its owner. In some rich burials, scimitars with exquisite finishes, inlaid with silver and precious stones, have been found. This suggests that even such a utilitarian object could be a source of pride and an indicator of high status. It was loyal to its owner both in life and after death. Unlike other weapons, which could belong to a clan, the sax was a deeply personal item. Runes with sacred meaning for the owner were often carved on its handle. It was not just a piece of steel, but a talisman and a companion. We would love to hear your opinion. What do you think about such a universal approach to weapons, where one item serves both in war and in peace? Write about it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Are you ready to learn the truth about the most common weapon of the Viking era? Contrary to images from movies, where every Scandinavian wields a huge axe or sword, the most common weapon was the spear. It was the basis of the armament of any northern army. The reason for its popularity was simple. It was cheap and easy to make. All you needed for a spear was a long wooden shaft and a relatively small metal tip. This made it affordable for any free man who was required to go to war with his own weapon. Viking spears ranged from 2 to 3 meters in length. This allowed them to keep the enemy at a safe distance and operate effectively in formation. Spearmen lined up in the famous shield wall formed an almost insurmountable barrier for enemy infantry and cavalry. Spearheads came in a variety of shapes, each designed for a specific purpose. Narrow, long spearheads were intended to pierce chainmail. Wide, leaf-shaped spearheads were designed to inflict serious lacerations. The spear was a versatile weapon. It could be used both for thrusting in formation and for throwing. Light-throwing spears, or javelins, were formidable weapons at the beginning of a battle, capable of thinning the enemy's ranks even before the main clash. The spear shaft, usually made of ash wood, was a weapon in itself. It could be used to block blows, push and knock opponents off their feet. An experienced warrior used the entire length of his weapon, turning it into a deadly instrument of control on the battlefield. Spearmanship did not require the same level of skill as sword fighting. The basic techniques could be learned fairly quickly, which made it possible to train a large number of combat-ready warriors in a short period of time. This was its strategic value. Despite its simplicity, the spear was extremely effective. In the hands of a skilled warrior, it prevented an enemy with a sword or axe from getting within striking distance. It was spears, not swords, that decided the outcome of most battles of that era. Sagas and chronicles often describe heroes who were masters of the spear. Some of them could throw 2 spears at once or catch enemy darts in mid-air. This shows that even such a simple weapon could become a work of art in the hands of a master. Why do you think the spear is so much less popular than the sword and axe in popular culture, despite its real historical significance? But even the spear could not compare in status and lethality to the rare and mysterious weapon we will discuss in the next chapter. What you have never seen is the atgear, the most mysterious and controversial weapon in the Viking arsenal. Mentioned in Icelandic sagas as the weapon of heroes and noble warriors, it still causes controversy among historians. Not a single 100% identified archaeological specimen of the atgear has been found. Judging by descriptions in the sagas, the atgear was a type of pole weapon, something between a spear and a halberd. Its name can be translated as spear for attack or piercing spear. It was a weapon designed for both stabbing and slashing blows. Most likely, the atgear had a long blade, similar to that of a glaive or sword, mounted on a long shaft. This design allowed powerful slashing blows to be delivered from a great distance. In the saga of Njal, one of the heroes cuts a man in half with a single blow of the atgear. Unlike a regular spear, the atgear was a weapon for individual combat, not for battle formations. It required a lot of space to maneuver and extraordinary strength and skill. Mastery of this weapon was a sign of belonging to the military elite. It was an expensive and rare weapon. Only the wealthiest and most noble chieftains or their best warriors could afford it. In the sagas, the atgear is often described as a personal, named weapon that was passed down through generations. Thanks to its length and cutting properties, the atgear was effective against both foot and mounted opponents. It could be used to strike a horseman and cut through enemy infantry formations. This made its owner a versatile fighter on the battlefield. The lack of archaeological finds has given rise to many theories. Some believe that atgear is not a specific type of weapon, but a general name for any exotic and expensive pole weapon, such as Frankish halberds. Others believe that very few were made. In the sagas, the atgear is a weapon of fateful duels and great deeds. Its owners are always outstanding personalities, heroes whose names have gone down in history. It was not just a tool, but a symbol of their exceptionality and power. Imagine a warrior towering over the battlefield, a blade gleaming on a long shaft in his hands. His mere appearance inspired fear and respect. The atgear was a weapon created to make legends. It is this mystery and elitism that make the atgear so attractive. It is a ghost weapon, a symbol of a bygone era of heroes, whose true form may remain a mystery forever. It embodies that side of Viking culture that is hidden from us in the mists of time. What if everything you've been taught about Viking warfare is outdated? The image of the Scandinavian warrior is strongly associated with close combat, but that's only half the story. Bows and arrows played a huge, though often underestimated role in their military campaigns. Viking bows were large and powerful, often made from a single piece of yew or ash wood. Such a bow could reach 2 meters in length, and its draw weight required serious physical training from the archer. It was a long-range weapon capable of hitting targets at a distance of up to 200 meters. Arrows were also varied, and their tips were selected depending on the target. Wide tips with blades were used against unprotected opponents. Narrow, faceted, armor-piercing tips were designed to pierce chainmail and helmets. The bow was indispensable in naval battles. Before boarding, Viking ships showered each other with clouds of arrows, seeking to clear the enemy's deck of defenders. A skilled archer could disable the helmsman or commander of an enemy ship even before hand-to-hand combat began. Archers also played a key role in the siege of fortresses and cities. They suppressed the defenders on the walls, preventing them from firing accurately at the attackers. Flaming arrows wrapped in resin-soaked tow were used to set fire to wooden buildings. On the battlefield, archers usually started the battle. A volley of hundreds of arrows could cause confusion in the enemy's ranks, disrupt their formation, and create gaps for the infantry to attack. Although the Vikings did not use archers in such large numbers as, for example, the English, they never neglected this type of weapon. Every free Scandinavian learned to use a bow from childhood. It was primarily a hunting tool, necessary for survival. This skill was easily transferred to the battlefield. Despite its effectiveness, the bow was not considered as noble a weapon as the sword or axe. In the sagas, heroes prefer to decide the outcome of duels in hand-to-hand combat. However, archers are always mentioned in descriptions of major battles. In some burials of noble warriors, not only swords and axes are found, but also expensive bows with quivers full of arrows. This indicates that even chieftains and kings valued and knew how to use this weapon. The bow was an important part of their military arsenal. Why didn't the bow become as much a symbol of the Vikings as their axes? In the next chapter, we'll talk about the weapon that became the real calling card of the northern warriors. The battle axe was perhaps the most democratic and versatile weapon of the Vikings. It was in the arsenal of almost every warrior, from a simple militiaman to a noble jarl. Its popularity was due to its accessibility and incredible effectiveness. Unlike the sword, which was expensive and difficult to manufacture, the axe was descended from a common carpentry tool. Every farmer had an axe for chopping wood or building. With minor modifications, it could easily be turned into a weapon. Battle axes had a lighter and thinner head compared to working axes. This allowed for quick and accurate strikes. The long handle provided good leverage and allowed the user to put all their strength and body weight into the blow. One of the most common types was the so-called bearded axe, or skegox. Its blade was extended downward, forming a beard. This shape allowed not only to chop, but also to hook the edge of the enemy's shield to pull it aside and strike. The axe was a devastating weapon against any armor. A powerful chopping blow could split a shield, break a helmet, or even pierce chainmail. Even if the armor withstood the blow, the force of the impact caused serious internal damage. In close combat, the axe could be used for more than just chopping. The butt could be used to stun the enemy, and the lower end of the handle could be used to deliver quick jabs. In the hands of a master, the axe was a versatile weapon for any distance in hand-to-hand combat. Despite its apparent crudeness, the battle axe required great skill to wield. A warrior had to be able to control its momentum, deliver rapid series of blows, and return the weapon in time after a swing. Fighting with an axe was like a deadly dance. Axes were often decorated, just like any other weapon. Their blades could be inlaid with silver or copper, intricate patterns, and runic inscriptions. This shows how much the Vikings valued this simple but formidable weapon. It was the axe, not the sword, that became the symbol of the Viking era in the minds of many generations. It embodies their practicality, strength, and ability to turn everyday objects into deadly instruments. A warrior with an axe is the classic image of a northern conqueror. There were also other, more specialized types of axes. Some were designed for throwing, while others had long handles for fighting at a distance. This diverse arsenal allowed them to choose the right tool for any combat task. Are you ready for the shocking truth about the most fearsome weapon of the Vikings? If the ordinary battle axe was a universal soldier, then the brodaxe, or Danish axe, was an elite weapon, the true king of the battlefield. The mere sight of this huge two-handed axe struck terror into the hearts of enemies. The The broadaxe was distinguished by its huge, wide, crescent-shaped blade. The blade's span from top to bottom could reach 30 centimeters. This blade was mounted on a long handle, up to 1.5 meters long. It was a two-handed weapon. A warrior armed with a broadaxe could not use a shield, which made him vulnerable. However, the crushing power of this weapon more than compensated for the lack of protection. The blow of a broadaxe was absolutely devastating. It easily cut through any chainmail, split any shield, and broke any helmet. No protection of that time could withstand its power. Warriors armed with broadaxe were the elite of the army. They were the strongest and most experienced fighters, such as the huscarls, the personal guard of the Scandinavian kings and English monarchs. They stood in the front ranks and cut gaps in the enemy's formation. Despite its size, the broadsword was surprisingly well balanced. An experienced warrior could use it not only to deliver powerful chopping blows, but also to deliver quick stabbing blows with the tip of the blade. It was not just a crude weapon, but a complex and deadly tool. The psychological effect of the broadaxe was enormous. The sight of warriors methodically cutting through the enemy's ranks with huge, gleaming blades had a demoralizing effect. Often, the mere presence of a squad with Danish axes could put the enemy to flight. It was this weapon that became legendary. The chronicles describing the Battle of Hastings say that the English huscarls cut down not only horsemen, but also their horses with their axes. The broadaxe were weapons capable of stopping even the attack of heavy knightly cavalry. What must it have been like to come face to face with a warrior armed with such a monstrous weapon? But even the most powerful attack is useless if the warrior is not protected. In the next chapter, we will talk about an item that was both armor and weapon at the same time. A round shield with bright colors and a shiny metal umbo in the center is as much an integral symbol of a Viking as his axe. But it was not just a passive element of defense. In the hands of a skilled warrior, the shield became a formidable weapon. Viking shields were made of light woods, such as linden or spruce, and had a diameter of about 1 meter. They were not designed to withstand a direct blow from a sword or axe, which would destroy them. Their purpose was to deflect blows to the side. The outside of the shield was often covered with leather or fabric, which made it stronger. The edges were reinforced with leather or thin metal strips. In the center was the umbo, a metal hemisphere that protected the warrior's arm and served to deliver blows. The Viking held the shield by the handle located behind the umbo. This gave him greater maneuverability compared to an elbow grip. He could quickly move the shield, blocking blows from different sides, and use it to attack. The umbo was used to deliver direct blows to the enemy's face or hands. Such a blow could stun or even break bones, giving the warrior precious seconds for a decisive attack. The edge of the shield was also used to deliver powerful blows to the legs or torso. But the main function of the shields was to create the famous wall of shields. Warriors closed their shields together to form a solid wall, from behind which they thrust their spears. It was almost impossible to break through such a formation. In the Viking Age, the sword was much more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of status, wealth, and power. Only the most noble and wealthy warriors, chieftains, jarls, and professional warriors, could afford to own a sword. The reason for this elitism was the incredible cost and complexity of making a sword. The production of a long blade from high-quality steel required the highest skill of a blacksmith and a huge amount of resources. A good sword cost a fortune, comparable to the cost of several cows or even an entire farm. Viking swords were predominantly one-handed, with a wide, straight, double-edged blade. Their design was primarily intended for chopping blows. The balance of the sword was shifted toward the tip, which increased the force of the blow. The pinnacle of blacksmithing was swords made using Damascus steel technology, or pattern welding. The blacksmith twisted and forged together strips of metal with different carbon contents. The result was a blade that combined flexibility and hardness, with a beautiful wavy pattern on its surface. The hilts of swords were true works of art. The pommel and guard were often made of bronze or silver. decorated with intricate engravings, blackening, and inlays of precious metals. The richness of the hilt's decoration was an indication of the owner's status. A sword was not just a weapon, but a family heirloom. It was passed down from generation to generation, from father to son. Many swords had their own names and histories, steeped in legends of great battles and feats. Mastering the sword required many years of training. Fencing was a complex art that included not only strikes, but also feints, blocks, and footwork. A sword duel was not just an exchange of blows, but an intellectual game with a deadly outcome. The most famous and coveted swords were those bearing the Ulfbert mark. These blades, made in the Rhine region, were distinguished by the incredible quality of their steel, which surpassed all other swords of the time. To obtain such a sword was the dream of every Viking. In battle, the sword was a weapon of breakthrough and individual feat. A warrior with a sword could cut through a line of spearmen and fight a duel with an enemy leader. However, due to their high cost, swords were never a weapon of mass production. Thus, the Viking sword was the quintessence of their ideas about honor, status, and military valor. It was not just a tool, but the soul of a warrior, his pride and legacy. It was a weapon created to make history. When talking about weapons, we must not forget about protection. Contrary to popular myth, Vikings never wore horned helmets. This image was invented by artists in the 19th century and has nothing to do with historical reality. A real Viking helmet was much more practical. The most common type was a cage helmet, or spangenhelm, assembled from several metal plates riveted together. More durable and expensive was a solid forged helmet with a nose guard, a metal plate that protected the nose and face. The helmet was the most important element of protection, but, like the sword, it was expensive. Therefore, many ordinary warriors went into battle with their heads uncovered or wore simple leather caps. The presence of a metal helmet was already a sign of a certain level of wealth. The main type of body armor was chainmail. It was a shirt woven from thousands of small iron rings. Each ring was not simply joined, but riveted, which made the armor incredibly durable. Chainmail was prohibitively expensive. It took months of painstaking labor to make, and only the wealthiest chiefs and kings could afford it. For most warriors, such armor was an unattainable dream. A more affordable alternative was lamellar or scale armor. It consisted of small metal plates sewn onto a leather or fabric base. Such armor was easier to make but less flexible than chainmail. The Vikings' most formidable weapon was not iron and steel, but something that could not be touched with the hands. It was the terror they instilled in their enemies long before the battle began. Their entire culture of warfare was aimed at breaking the enemy's spirit before the first blow was struck. It all started with their ships, the Drakars. Imagine the coast of a peaceful village, on the horizon of which dozens of ships with striped sails suddenly appear. Their prows are decorated with carved heads of dragons and snakes that seem about to spew fire. The mere sight of this armada gliding silently across the water paralyzed the will to resist. Drakars were a symbol of inevitable doom, sea monsters carrying death and destruction on their backs. This was the first wave of psychological attack. Then came the assault on the senses. Before landing, the Vikings beat drums and blew horns, creating a deafening, wild roar. This sound, mixed with their guttural battle cries, was intended to sow panic and chaos among the defenders. The appearance of the warriors themselves was also part of this strategy. They were tall, strong men with long hair and beards, often braided into plaits. Their bodies were covered with tattoos, and they wore bear and wolf skins on their shoulders. The berserkers occupied a special place in this theater of horror. These warriors, who had dedicated themselves to the god Odin, fell into a sacred battle frenzy. According to the sagas, in this state they felt no pain, howled like wild beasts, and gnawed at the edges of their shields. The sight of a berserker, foaming at the mouth and with burning eyes, rushing alone at enemy spears, could break even the most steadfast soldiers. It was unclear how to fight a man who no longer seemed human. He was a living nightmare on the battlefield. We have looked at 10 types of weapons that made the Vikings masters of the seas and the terror of Europe. From the simple but effective spear to the status symbol of the sword, from the versatile axe to the terrifying drakkar, every element of their arsenal was designed and refined to achieve a single goal. This arsenal was a reflection of their society, pragmatic, cruel, and incredibly effective. The military culture of the Northerners was not a cult of blind rage, but a cult of skill. They valued not only courage, but also weapon mastery, tactical knowledge, and the ability to use any resource to achieve victory. It was this combination of strength, intelligence, and a fearsome reputation that allowed them to write their name in history for several centuries. What topics from the Viking era or other historical periods would you like to see in our next issues? Share your ideas in the comments, because you are the ones who help us create interesting content. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on new journeys into the past.
What story shall we tell next?